The forgotten artifact. The ancient ruins on the distant planet were like many others, overgrown with plants, forgotten by time, and barely remembered by anyone. Yet, to the explorers who landed there, they seemed full of mystery and hidden secrets. A team of 6 had come from different parts of the galaxy, each one eager to find treasure or forgotten knowledge. None of them knew that this planet, hidden in the far corner of space, would change everything. It had all started with a map, a strange old map found in the archives of an ancient library. The map showed the location of the ruins, marked by a strange symbol. No one knew exactly what the symbol meant, but it was enough to draw the team together. They had traveled through space, passed through countless systems, and faced dangerous obstacles just to get here. The planet was covered in thick, dense jungles. The air was thick with moisture, and the ground beneath their boots was soft and uneven. The ruins were deep inside, hidden away from anyone who might stumble upon them. The team moved cautiously, their boots crunching softly on the forest floor, their eyes scanning the area. "Stay sharp," said Captain Joran, the leader of the group. "This place is old, very old. Who knows what kind of traps could be here?" The others nodded, but their excitement was clear. After years of searching, they were finally on the brink of discovery. There was something about these ruins that felt different, something they couldn't quite explain. As they made their way deeper into the jungle, the trees grew taller, their roots twisting into strange shapes. Strange sounds echoed in the distance. Birds with colorful feathers called out from above. It almost felt like the jungle itself was alive, watching them. But the team pressed on. Finally, after hours of trekking through the dense jungle, they reached the ruins. The stone walls were crumbling, covered with vines, but there was something about them that felt alive. It was almost as if the place was breathing, waiting for something. The team gathered around, examining the walls and the carvings. "These symbols," said Dr. Lena, the archaeologist, "they don't match anything I've seen before. They look ancient, even older than any known civilization." "Do you think they mean anything?" asked Marcus, the tech specialist, pointing at the strange carvings. Lena looked closer, running her fingers over the symbols. "I'm not sure. But I can tell this is no ordinary ruin. Something was here. Something powerful." Captain Joran stepped forward, his boots making a soft thud on the stone. The air felt heavy, almost like it was charged with energy. He couldn't explain it, but something about this place made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. He looked around at his team, seeing the same sense of unease in their eyes. They found the entrance to what seemed to be the main chamber of the ruin. It was a large doorway, but it was unlike anything they had seen before. The door was made of a strange, dark metal, its surface etched with more of those ancient symbols. The team stood in front of it, unsure what to do. "This is it," Joran said, his voice low. "This is where the map led us." Marcus moved forward, pulling out his tools. He started working on the door, trying to figure out how to open it. His fingers moved quickly, his mind focused on the task at hand. After a few tense moments, there was a soft click. The door creaked open slowly, revealing the chamber inside. A cold draft rushed out, carrying the scent of age and decay. The team stepped inside, their lights illuminating the darkness. What they saw was both incredible and terrifying. In the center of the room stood an altar made of stone. It was surrounded by more of the strange symbols, carved into the floor and walls. But it wasn't the altar that caught their attention. It was what lay on it. A small object, about the size of a fist, sat on the altar. It looked like a stone, but it was unlike any stone they had ever seen before. It shimmered with an odd, faint light. The surface of the object seemed to pulse, as if it was alive. The moment they saw it, something inside them shifted. It was as if the object was calling to them, pulling them in. "Is that it?" Lena whispered. "Is that the artifact we've been searching for?" Joran stepped forward cautiously, his hand hovering over the object. There was something about it that made him feel uneasy, but at the same time, he couldn't look away. He reached out and touched the object. The moment his fingers made contact, a jolt of energy shot through his hand. His whole body stiffened, and for a moment, he felt like he was being pulled into the stone itself. "Captain!" Lena cried, rushing forward to help him. But Joran quickly pulled his hand back, his heart racing. "What was that?" he asked, his voice trembling. "I don't know," said Marcus, looking at the stone. "But I've never seen anything like this before. This thing, it's not just a relic. It's something more." The team gathered around the altar, their eyes fixed on the strange stone. They couldn't explain what had just happened, but they all knew one thing for sure. This was no ordinary artifact. And whatever it was, it had just been awakened. A strange energy began to fill the room. The air grew thick with power. The ground beneath their feet trembled. The stone began to glow brighter, its pulse quickening. And then, just as quickly as it had started, everything stopped. The team stood in silence, their eyes wide with fear and wonder. They had found something ancient, something powerful. And they knew, deep down, that nothing would ever be the same again. The air in the chamber felt different now, thick with a strange tension that none of the explorers could explain. The moment the artifact had been touched, everything around them had shifted. The very walls seemed to hum with an energy that hadn't been there before. The stone on the altar now glowed with a faint, eerie light, casting long shadows across the room. Captain Joran stepped back from the altar, his heart racing in his chest. The jolt of energy that had surged through him was still fresh in his mind. He glanced at his team, their faces a mix of fear and curiosity. They were all silent, unsure of what to do next. "Did anyone else feel that?" Marcus asked, his voice trembling. He had always been the one to stay calm, the tech expert who could analyze anything. But this was different. Lena, the archaeologist, nodded slowly. That wasn't normal. It's like the artifact reacted to his touch. But why? The team huddled together, their eyes flicking nervously back to the stone. The chamber was unnervingly quiet now, but the feeling of something alive, something waiting, still lingered in the air. Joran turned to face them, his voice firm. "We need to leave this place. Whatever this artifact is, it's too dangerous. We don't know what it could do." But as he spoke, the ground beneath them trembled slightly, as though reacting to his words. The faint humming sound of the chamber grew louder, vibrating through their bones. The stone on the altar flickered again, this time pulsing with a stronger light. "We can't leave now," said Dr. Lena, her eyes wide with realization. "We came here for answers, and this artifact is part of them. It's not just some relic. It's a key. I'm sure of it." Joran's eyes narrowed. A key to what? Lena took a step closer to the altar, her hands trembling as she pointed at the glowing stone. "I don't know, but whatever it is, it's not going to let us go until we find out. That light, it's not just a glow. It's like a signal. It's reaching out." Marcus, who had been fiddling with his gadgets, suddenly looked up. His expression had changed. "Captain, the ship's comms. They're picking up something. It's faint, but there's a signal, almost like a distress beacon." "Distress beacon," Joran echoed. "From where?" Marcus hesitated. "From somewhere. Close. Really close. The readings are coming from the direction of the ruins." The team fell silent, staring at each other. The discovery of the artifact was only the beginning. It seemed like this place had far more to offer, or perhaps more to warn them about. Joran was the first to speak. "We can't ignore it. We're already in this far. We need to investigate." Lena nodded. "We might be able to learn something about the civilization that left this behind. Maybe even learn why it's reacting like this." Against his better judgment, Joran agreed. They had come so far, and leaving now would feel like abandoning the mission. The strange signal was growing stronger, urging them to press on. The group moved cautiously, their lights sweeping through the chamber as they tried to make sense of what was happening. They approached the altar again, but the closer they got, the stronger the hum became. It felt almost alive, like the walls themselves were pulsing with energy. Then, just as they were about to inspect the stone further, something changed. The stone on the altar suddenly cracked, and a sharp, high-pitched sound filled the chamber. The team froze in shock. The crack spread across the surface of the stone, glowing brighter with every second. It was as if something inside the artifact was waking up. "What's happening?" Marcus asked, his voice tight with fear. Joran stepped forward again, drawn to the artifact despite his hesitation. He couldn't explain it, but he felt as though the stone was calling to him. It was like the very core of his being was responding to it. Then, with a violent shudder, the stone shattered. A burst of light exploded outward, blinding them all for a moment. The team staggered back, shielding their eyes from the intense glow. The stone had broken apart, but what lay inside was far more terrifying than any of them had expected. In the center of the shattered artifact lay a small, perfectly round object, glowing with the same strange light. But this was no ordinary stone or relic. It was a key, an ancient, intricately designed key. And it wasn't just a key for a door. This was a key to something much bigger, much more dangerous. As they stared at the key, the humming in the air grew louder, more urgent. And then, in a low, distant whisper, the air seemed to speak. "You have awoken the fury." The voice echoed in their minds, chilling them to the core. It wasn't coming from anywhere physical, but they all heard it. It was as though the voice was coming from the key itself. Lena's eyes widened. What did it say? What was that? I don't know, Joran said, his heart pounding. But I think we've just triggered something. Something ancient, and it doesn't want us here. Suddenly, the ground shook violently, and the chamber began to tremble, as if something powerful deep below the planet was waking up. The walls cracked, and dust filled the air. The team staggered to keep their footing. Joran's mind raced. We need to get out of here. Now. But it was too late. The artifact had awakened, and whatever it had been waiting for, it was about to come for them. The team ran, the sound of crumbling stone echoing behind them as the chamber fell apart. They didn't know what the artifact was or what it would bring. But they knew one thing for sure. They had just unleashed something that the galaxy was not ready for. The rumble beneath their feet had not stopped. The walls continued to tremble as if they were alive, groaning and cracking under the weight of something immense. The team scrambled, their hearts racing as they made their way toward the exit. But with every step, the sound of destruction grew louder. Something was stirring deep inside the planet. Something ancient, powerful, and filled with fury. Joran, the team's leader, turned back one last time to look at the chamber. The artifact was gone. Only the shattered pieces of stone remained, the eerie glow of the key still pulsing with a slow, rhythmic beat. The key had vanished into thin air, like it had never been there. But that voice, that chilling whisper, asterisk, "You have awoken the fury," asterisk, was still fresh in their minds. They had no idea what it meant, but the feeling of dread it left behind was undeniable. "Move faster," Joran shouted, snapping the team out of their daze. They had to get out. They couldn't afford to stand around and wonder what had just happened. Something was waking up, something they had no control over. They rushed down the narrow hallways of the ancient ruin, the stone beneath their feet unstable, crumbling with every step. The tremors grew stronger, the walls closing in around them, as if the very heart of the planet was pushing them out. Lena, the archaeologist, glanced over her shoulder. "What the hell was that?" she muttered. "We triggered something. I just know it." Marcus, the tech expert, kept his eyes on his handheld device, trying to make sense of the readings it was picking up. "We didn't just wake something. We unleashed it. The energy levels are off the charts, Captain. Whatever it is, it's coming for us." The air in the ruins grew heavy with an oppressive heat. The temperature rose dramatically, and sweat began to form on the team's brows as they sprinted toward the exit. The ground beneath them cracked open, sending tremors through the entire structure. The very fabric of the ancient ruins was collapsing, unable to withstand the power now awakening from within. "We're almost there," Joran called out, seeing the light of the entrance up ahead. The team pushed on, hearts pounding in their chests. But just as they were about to break free from the ruins, the entire world seemed to shift. A sudden force exploded from the depths of the structure, and the team was thrown to the ground. The air around them crackled with energy, and the ground buckled beneath them. Something massive had risen, and the planet itself was shaking in response. "What is that?" Lena screamed, her voice filled with terror. She pointed toward the sky, and the others followed her gaze. From the ground, the team saw it, an enormous figure rising from the depths of the planet's crust. It wasn't just a beast or a machine. It was something far older. Its form was massive, towering over them like a mountain. Its body seemed to be made of the same glowing energy they had seen in the artifact, but now it was twisted, raw, and dark. The creature moved with slow, deliberate power, as if it had all the time in the universe. It had awakened, and now it was free. The sky above them rippled with lightning, casting an eerie glow over the massive figure. Its eyes burned with the same unnatural light, filled with anger and hunger. Joran stood frozen for a moment, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. He had known that something terrible might happen, but nothing had prepared him for this. This wasn't just an ancient relic. They had awakened a force beyond their comprehension. "We need to run," Marcus shouted, breaking Joran from his thoughts. But before they could react, the creature's massive form surged toward them, moving faster than its size suggested. The ground cracked and split as it moved, sending waves of destruction in every direction. It was like watching a natural disaster unfold in real time. "Go!" Joran yelled. They had no choice now. There was no escaping it. The only chance they had was to get back to the ship and out of this hellhole before it was too late. The team turned and ran, but the earth beneath them trembled as the creature's massive steps came closer. Each step it took seemed to shake the very foundations of the ruins, and the team could barely keep their footing. They sprinted as fast as they could, but the creature was getting closer with every passing second. "We're not going to make it," Lena gasped, fear evident in her voice. "Yes, we will." Joran gritted his teeth. "Just keep moving." They rounded a corner, and the entrance to the ruins came into view. The ship was just 100 meters away, but the creature was still in pursuit. Its form loomed over them like a shadow, casting a terrifying presence over the entire landscape. Marcus glanced at his scanner. "The ship's systems are failing. We can't leave yet." "What?" Joran yelled. "We don't have time for this." "It's the energy," Marcus said, his voice strained. "It's disrupting our systems. The closer we get to that thing, the worse it gets." Joran cursed under his breath. They had no choice now. It wasn't just a race to the ship anymore. It was a race to survive. With no time to waste, the team pushed forward with everything they had left. The massive creature was gaining on them, its anger-filled gaze locking onto them like a predator chasing its prey. The ground shook violently, and dust filled the air as the ruins collapsed in the wake of the creature's wrath. As they neared the ship, Joran felt a surge of hope, until the ground beneath them cracked wide open. The ship's engines sputtered to life, but it was too late. The massive creature loomed closer, and they were trapped. It had them cornered. There was no escape. Suddenly, a roar ripped through the air, and the creature's colossal form seemed to pause for just a moment. A new sound filled the air, a human voice, echoing through the chaos, filled with rage and fury. "You have awakened the wrong thing." The voice came from nowhere, but it was unmistakable. It was a voice the team knew too well. Joran's eyes widened. He turned toward the source of the voice, But all he could see was the destruction around him. They weren't alone. And this new force, this new power, wasn't something the creature had expected. The ground cracked open beneath the team's feet, and the sky above them darkened, as if the very atmosphere was being torn apart by the force they had awoken. The massive creature continued its approach, its monstrous steps shaking the earth. The air was thick with dust, and the temperature seemed to rise by the second. Yet, despite the overwhelming terror, a new, unfamiliar presence stirred in the distance. Duran's breath caught in his throat as he scanned the wreckage around them. His mind was racing, trying to make sense of the situation. The creature's eyes were filled with rage, its enormous body casting a shadow over them as it advanced. The entire planet was trembling under its fury, and the team had no idea how to stop it. "Where's the ship?" Lena gasped, her voice barely audible over the roar of the creature's destruction. She was gripping Duran's arm, her face pale with fear. "We need to get to it, now," Duran shouted, his voice hoarse. "Marcus, are the systems still down?" Marcus frantically typed into his handheld device, his hands shaking. "I'm trying to override the systems, but the interference is too strong. Whatever that thing is, it's affecting everything." A deafening roar split the air, and the creature's massive form loomed closer. It was only a few dozen meters away now. Duran could see the destruction it was causing. Buildings crumbled in its wake, and the landscape was being reshaped by its mere presence. "We don't have much time," Marcus shouted. "If we don't get out of here soon, we'll be trapped." Duran's mind raced. There had to be a way. They had to fight back, or they would be crushed under the weight of the creature's wrath. Suddenly, a loud hum filled the air, rising above the roar of the creature. The sound was mechanical, but it didn't come from any of their equipment. It was too controlled, too precise. Duran spun around, his eyes searching for the source. The humming grew louder, and then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw it, a flicker of light in the distance. It wasn't a star, and it wasn't the creature. It was something else entirely. Something human. "What is that?" Lena asked, her voice filled with a mix of confusion and fear. "It's the signal," Duran muttered under his breath. He had no idea how it was possible, but he was sure of one thing. They weren't alone. The creature paused, its eyes flickering to the light in the distance. The massive beast hesitated for a moment, sensing the change in the air. It had never been challenged before. Its instincts were telling it to retreat, but something powerful was drawing it closer, almost as if it was being drawn into a trap. The humming sound grew louder, almost deafening now. Then, as if on cue, a massive, sleek vessel dropped from the sky like a shadow. Its silhouette against the stormy backdrop was menacing, an enormous warship of human design. The craft was unlike any the team had ever seen. It was sleek, deadly, and imposing. Its surface gleamed with an energy that made the air crackle with electricity. Duran's heart pounded in his chest as the realization hit him. This wasn't just a rescue mission. It was a show of force. The warship hovered above the ground, casting a massive shadow that seemed to make the creature shrink in size. The once mighty beast, towering and terrifying, now looked like a mere insect under the craft's oppressive presence. The creature took a step back, its eyes narrowing as it regarded the new threat. But the ship wasn't here to negotiate. It was here to end the fight. A deep, resonating voice echoed from the ship, the words cutting through the storm of confusion and fear. "The Relic has been awakened. Its fury will be matched." Duran and his team froze, staring up at the ship as it loomed overhead. The voice didn't belong to anyone they recognized. It was cold, calculating, and filled with authority. The creature, now facing this new threat, let out a roar of defiance, its massive form trembling with rage. It wasn't about to back down from a fight, but the ship's presence was overwhelming, a clear message that it was not going to lose this battle. The ground beneath them vibrated as the warship unleashed a low-frequency pulse, sending shockwaves through the air. The creature howled in pain, its enormous body shaking violently. The pulse hit it directly, knocking it to the ground. The beast struggled to rise, its claws scraping against the earth as it tried to stand. But the pulse was relentless. "Get to the ship," Joran shouted, his voice filled with urgency. There was no time to waste. The pulse was only going to hold the creature back for so long, and they had to escape before the creature recovered. The team turned and ran, pushing themselves as fast as they could. The warship hovered in place, continuing to fire pulses that shook the creature to its core. Every shot sent the beast reeling, but it wasn't enough to stop it completely. It would rise again. As they neared the ship, Joran saw the ramp descend. The moment they reached it, they could hear the hum of the ship's engines and the faint sound of footsteps from within. They didn't know who was on board or who had sent the ship, but they didn't care. It was their only chance. They reached the ramp, and just as they boarded, Joran turned to look back. The creature was still struggling to rise, its massive body trembling with each blow. But the ship's pulse weapon was relentless, tearing into the beast and keeping it at bay. Joran could see it. They had a chance. The ramp closed behind them, and the ship shot into the sky, leaving the ancient planet behind. But as the team looked out the windows, they knew this was only the beginning. The ship's interior was unlike anything Joran had ever seen before. The walls gleamed with a smooth metallic surface that seemed to absorb light, giving off an eerie glow. The air was cool, almost sterile, and a faint hum filled the atmosphere, like the pulse of a living creature. The team sat in silence, trying to process the chaos that had just unfolded before them. The creature was still out there, somewhere on the planet's surface, but for now, they were safe. They had no idea who had sent the warship or why it had come to their rescue. The sudden appearance of the ship and its overwhelming power raised more questions than answers. Joran glanced around at his team. Lena was staring out of the nearest window, her face pale, still trying to comprehend the destruction they had witnessed. Marcus was hunched over a console, his fingers flying over the controls, searching for any sign of communication from the crew of the ship. "We need answers," Marcus muttered, frustration evident in his voice. "Who sent that ship? Why were we rescued?" "We don't know," Joran replied, his voice heavy with doubt. "But we need to figure it out fast. That thing we awakened, it's not just a creature. There's something more to it." As if on cue, the door at the far end of the room slid open, and a figure stepped inside. The individual was tall, clad in dark armor, their face obscured by a helmet. The figure moved with purpose, exuding an aura of authority. It was clear that they were in charge. "Captain Joran," the figure's voice echoed through the room, cold and commanding. "I am Commander Valen. We've been monitoring the situation on the planet." Joran stood up, instinctively reaching for his sidearm, but stopped when he realized the figure had no visible weapon. Instead, Valen's presence alone seemed to demand respect. "What do you know about the creature we encountered?" Joran asked, his voice laced with suspicion. "Why did you intervene?" Commander Valen's helmet tilted slightly, as if considering the question. "The creature you awoke is no ordinary beast," Valen said, their tone even but tinged with caution. "It is the last of its kind, a relic from an ancient war long forgotten." Lena stepped forward, her eyes wide. "A relic? What do you mean?" Valen's voice remained steady, but there was a strange sadness in it. "This creature is the product of a weapon, created by a civilization long before your species even existed. It was designed to be a living, breathing war machine. But when its creators were destroyed, it was left to roam the galaxy, a remnant of their failed ambitions." Joran felt his stomach tighten as he processed the information. This wasn't just a creature. It was part of something much larger, something dangerous. "How did you know about it?" he asked, suspicion creeping into his voice. "And why did you help us?" Commander Valen paused before responding, as if weighing their words carefully. "We've been tracking this relic for years. It was only a matter of time before someone accidentally awakened it. And when that happened, we were prepared to intervene. You and your team were merely unfortunate enough to stumble upon it. Marcus's eyes narrowed. So you've been watching us all along? Not directly, Valen replied, their voice still detached. But we knew that eventually someone would uncover the relic. We've been preparing for this moment for a long time. It's not just the creature you need to worry about. Lena frowned. What do you mean? There are others, Valen said, their tone darkening. Others who seek the power of the relic for themselves, and they will stop at nothing to control it. They are the true enemy. Joran's mind raced. There was more at play here than just an ancient creature. There were forces hidden in the shadows that were moving toward their goal, and they weren't going to wait for anyone to catch up. We can't just leave this thing alone, Joran said, a new sense of urgency flooding his words. If it's truly this dangerous, we need to destroy it. Keep it from falling into the wrong hands. Valen's expression remained unreadable. It's not that simple. The relic is a key to unlocking an ancient power that could reshape the galaxy. The team was silent, the weight of Valen's words sinking in. Joran felt his blood run cold. A power that could reshape the galaxy. That was something no one could allow to fall into the wrong hands. What do we need to do? Marcus asked, his voice filled with determination. You need to understand the relic's history, Valen replied. You need to learn everything about it. Only then will you know how to stop the forces that seek to control it. The room was tense, the silence broken only by the soft hum of the ship's engines. Joran knew this was just the beginning. They were on the verge of something much bigger, something far more dangerous than they could have imagined. The stakes were higher now, and the path ahead was uncertain. Where do we start? Joran asked, his voice steady but filled with resolve. We begin with the knowledge hidden in the relic, Valen answered. There is a location, an ancient archive, where the truth lies, but it is heavily guarded. You will have to fight your way through if you wish to uncover what it holds. The room fell silent once more. The team exchanged glances, their expressions a mixture of fear and determination. They were already in too deep to turn back now. The fight for the relic's secrets had only just begun. Joran felt the weight of the task ahead pressing down on him. The revelation that the relic was not just a weapon, but a key to something far greater sent chills down his spine. The hidden archive, wherever it was the next step toward unraveling the truth. But with every answer, more questions seemed to arise, and time was running out. Do you have any idea where this archive is? Lena asked, breaking the silence that had settled over the room. Her voice was laced with both curiosity and concern. Commander Valen stood in front of the map, their gloved finger tracing the contours of a distant region in the galaxy. The area was marked with a symbol that Joran didn't recognize, a complex shape resembling an ancient star map. It wasn't just a regular coordinate. It felt like it was hiding something important. The archive is located on an abandoned moon, Valen explained, her voice steady. It was once part of a network of ancient outposts used by the creators of the relic. Over time, the locations of these outposts were lost, but this one remains hidden. Few have ever found it, and fewer still have survived to tell the tale. Joran nodded, understanding the gravity of their mission. The moon was likely a dead zone, abandoned long ago, its secrets buried beneath layers of dust and time. But it wasn't just the moon that worried him. It was the others, the ones who were actively hunting the relic. If they found the archive first, they would gain access to unimaginable power. How do we get there? Joran asked, his voice tinged with urgency. And how do we know we're not walking right into a trap? Valen's helmeted gaze fixed on him. We have a guide, someone who knows the location of the archive and who can get you there safely. But you'll need to act fast. The enemy is already on its way. The last word sent a jolt through Joran's body. The enemy. They had been operating in the shadows for far too long, and now they were making their move. He couldn't afford to wait any longer. "We'll leave immediately," Joran said, standing tall. "Prepare the ship. The sooner we get to that moon, the better." As they made their preparations, Joran's mind raced with thoughts of the journey ahead. The moon would be dangerous, but they couldn't afford to hesitate. Every second counted. The others, whoever they were, would stop at nothing to reach the archive. They had already demonstrated their ruthlessness, and with the power of the relic at their disposal, they could change the course of the galaxy forever. The ship lurched as it entered the outer reaches of the star system, heading toward the dark moon that was their target. The crew was silent, each of them stewing in their own thoughts. It was impossible to ignore the growing sense of dread that had taken hold of them. No one knew what awaited them on the surface, but they all knew one thing for sure: they would have to fight to survive. The moon loomed ahead, its surface dark and desolate. The absence of life was palpable, and yet there was an unmistakable feeling that something ancient lingered there, waiting to be discovered. Approaching the moon's surface now, Marcus said from the cockpit, "Hang on. This ride's gonna be rough." As the ship descended through the moon's atmosphere, turbulence rattled the crew, making the journey feel like an eternity. But through the storm of uncertainty, Joran kept his focus. The relic's secret had to be unlocked. There was no turning back now. The ship touched down with a jarring thud, the landing gear scraping against the rocky terrain. They had made it. "Everyone, get ready," Joran commanded. "This isn't going to be easy. Stay sharp." The doors of the ship opened, and a gust of cold air rushed in, carrying the scent of decay. It was a lifeless place, the ground cracked and dry, with barely a sign of movement. But as Joran stepped out, he could feel the weight of the unknown pressing in. This place wasn't just abandoned. It had been forgotten for a reason. They made their way toward the center of the moon, the location of the hidden archive. The path was treacherous, with jagged rocks and deep craters, but Joran's determination pushed him forward. "This place gives me the creeps," Lena muttered, her eyes darting around nervously. "It feels like we're walking into a trap." "We might be," Joran said, keeping his voice low. "But we don't have a choice. We need that knowledge." The further they ventured, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The air was thick with an unsettling silence, and Joran couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. It was as if the moon itself had a mind, waiting for something, or someone, to awaken it. Finally, after what felt like hours, they reached the entrance to the archive. The structure was ancient, carved directly into the mountain, its walls covered in strange symbols and carvings. It was clear that the people who had built this place had understood something beyond the comprehension of most civilizations. "Is this it?" Marcus asked, awe in his voice. "This is the archive." Joran nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. "This is it. We need to go inside." But as they stepped closer to the entrance, something unexpected happened. The ground beneath their feet trembled, and a deep guttural sound echoed from within the mountain. Joran's heart skipped a beat. They were not alone. The trap was already closing in. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and the air thickened with an unseen presence. Joran's heart pounded as he motioned for the team to fall into formation. There was no turning back now. The entrance to the ancient archive loomed before them, but the deep guttural sound that echoed from within the mountain made it clear that whatever lay inside, it wasn't going to be easy to uncover. "Stay alert," Joran whispered, his voice steady despite the fear that gnawed at him. "We don't know what we're walking into." The team moved cautiously, their boots crunching on the dry, cracked earth as they approached the entrance. The massive stone door, etched with symbols that seemed to pulse faintly, stood wide open now. There was no sign of who, or what, had caused the tremor. But the chill in the air was unmistakable. Something ancient and powerful was stirring within. Lena's hand hovered near the sidearm at her waist, her eyes scanning every shadow. "This doesn't feel right," she muttered under her breath. "Something's watching us." Joren didn't respond. He knew that feeling too well. Every instinct screamed that they were being watched, studied. But they couldn't hesitate. They had to push forward. The doorway was narrow but tall, the stone walls adorned with intricate carvings that seemed to tell a story. The ancient markings almost seemed to come alive in the low light, flickering like fire in the distance. With each step they took, the air grew heavier, as though the very weight of the mountain was pressing down on them. Inside, the room was vast, far larger than Joren had anticipated. At the center stood a massive dark altar, surrounded by stone columns that seemed to stretch endlessly into the shadows above. The floor was covered in dust, but in the dim light, Joren could make out the faint outline of strange symbols carved deep into the stone. "Is this the archive?" Marcus asked, his voice filled with awe. Joren nodded slowly. "This is it, the knowledge we've been searching for." But as he stepped closer to the altar, a sudden flash of light erupted from the center of the room, and a violent tremor shook the ground once more. The stone columns cracked and crumbled as a deep, resonating voice echoed through the chamber. "You dare disturb the slumber of the Ancient Ones." The voice was both chilling and commanding. It didn't seem to come from anywhere in particular, but filled the entire room, vibrating through Joren's bones. Joren's eyes darted around, searching for the source of the voice. The room was empty, nothing but shadows and the remnants of a once great civilization. But there was no mistaking the presence in the air now. Something, or someone, was here, and it wasn't pleased with their intrusion. "What is this?" Lena whispered, her voice trembling with fear. Before Joren could respond, the altar in the center of the room began to glow, pulsing with an eerie blue light. A low hum filled the air, and the ground seemed to vibrate in response. The ancient relic, the one they had come for, was awakening. But as the glow intensified, Joren realized that it was not just the relic that was stirring. Something far more dangerous was coming to life. The walls of the chamber began to crack, revealing hidden passages behind them. From those dark spaces, shadowy figures began to emerge. At first, they were indistinct, just wisps of smoke and energy. But as they materialized, Joren could see them clearly. Tall, robed figures with glowing eyes and skeletal features. They were like nothing he had ever seen. Ghosts, specters, or perhaps something even older. "We've made a grave mistake," Valen muttered under her breath. "These are the guardians of the relic, and they're not going to let us leave." Joren's mind raced. The guardians were the stuff of legends, ancient protectors of the secrets buried within the archive. But he hadn't expected them to be real. And now, with their appearance, he realized that this wasn't just a hunt for knowledge. It was a battle for survival. The first guardian lunged at them, its glowing eyes fixed on Joren. With unnatural speed, it moved to strike, its skeletal hand raised high, ready to bring death. Joren barely managed to dodge, drawing his weapon as he moved. The blast rang out, but it passed straight through the guardian's form, leaving no mark. "They're not physical," Joren shouted to his team. "They're illusions, energy manifestations." But it was too late. The other guardians had already surrounded them, their glowing eyes burning with an intensity that made Joren's stomach twist. They were trapped. Lena fired her weapon, but the blast simply passed through the air. "We can't hurt them," she yelled, panic creeping into her voice. "We don't need to fight them," Joren replied, trying to stay calm. "We need to reach the relic." With no other choice, Joren sprinted toward the altar. The guardians closed in, but he pushed forward, knowing that if they didn't get to the relic, they would never escape. At the center of the altar, a pedestal rose, and on it sat the relic, an ancient device that pulsed with an otherworldly energy. Joren could feel its power even from a distance. It was calling to him, beckoning him closer. But as his hand reached out to touch the relic, the guardians converged around him, their glowing eyes now filled with rage. "You dare take what belongs to the Ancient Ones," one of the figures hissed. Joren's fingers brushed the relic, and in that moment, A surge of energy blasted out from it, throwing the guardians back. The room shook violently as the relic awakened in full, its power igniting the entire chamber. The guardians screamed, their forms disintegrating into nothingness. The relic had chosen them, and with its awakening, the balance of power in the galaxy would shift forever. Joran stood, breathless, as the chamber began to collapse around them. The relic's power was too great, too dangerous, and now they were bound to it. The battle wasn't over yet. In fact, it had only just begun.